Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, those of you here as well as those who are viewing online or via our campus broadcasting system. My name is Sister Elise Garcia. I'm a member of the General Council of the Adrian Dominican Sisters. We are a congregation of nearly 650 members, headquartered here in Adrian, Michigan. But we minister throughout the United States and also in the Dominican Republic and the Philippines. And it's my delight today to introduce you to one of our sisters, Corinne Florek, who is a national leader in the field of socially responsible investing. Corinne has been involved in community investing and in corporate responsibility work for more than 35 years. She holds an MBA from Notre Dame and is a past recipient of the prestigious Ned Gramlich Lifetime Achievement Award for her, which is presented each year by the Opportunity Finance Network. She was recognized for her outstanding achievements in building assets for underserved communities. So we are delighted to have Corinne with us today to gain her insights and expertise on how to vote our proxies and influence corporate policies. Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you, Elise. I appreciate that introduction. And thank you to all of those who came live to the live stream. Appreciate that. And what I hope to do in this presentation is encourage you to join us in voting your proxies for shareholder resolutions. And I'm going to share with you the why and the how. And at the end of the presentation, we will have some reflections from three sisters who've actually been voting the proxies for the Adrian Dominican Sisters, and what it takes and why they do it and what it means, what the impact is. So to begin, this is the why. Over the past century, corporate power has become the most dominant force on the planet. Now, I hope that makes you sit up and take notice. Of the 150 largest economic entities in the world, 87 are corporations. That's 58%. So when we think about who is influencing what happens in the world, I think this quote, these statistics make us pause. An estimated 48% of adult Americans, or approximately 91 million people, have some ownership stake in public companies. Now, just think if every single one of them voted their proxies. Unfortunately, they don't. I've heard many times people say, oh gosh, those come in the mail and I just recycle them. Well, I'm here to encourage you not to recycle them, but to vote them. And hopefully I'll give you enough reasons why, so you'll start doing that. Another quote I wanted to share with you was from Darren Walker, the president of the Ford Foundation, who said, use your privilege to demand justice. You know, the fact that we even have a retirement fund, and I know for many of us it's still a source of insecurity, but the fact that we do, and many people on this planet only earn $2 a day, means that we really are among the privileged. So let's use that to demand justice. If you own shares, you have a voice. And I'm here today to ask you to use your influence to improve corporate decision-making and create change on the issues you care about. After all, investments are your money, and they should be working for you, not just in terms of return, but also what are they doing in terms of affecting our environment and workers? How that money works depends on your values, your decisions, and your actions. And here's an interesting note. It's since 1930 that shareholders have the right to vote and therefore the legal and moral responsibility to exert their influence on corporate behavior. So we've had this right for a while. It was not automatic. But in reality, corporations are designed to be democratic. They give shareholders votes. So we want you to use that vote. It's as powerful as the one at the polling booth. This is another just interesting statistic. there is $30 trillion in investments. And that wealth transfer from baby boomers, of which I am one, I will claim I am a baby boomer, to 90 million millennials will take place. And yet 67% of millennials believe that investments are the way to express social, political, and environmental value, versus 36% of baby boomers. So I want to increase that percentage of baby boomers and say, get out there and vote your proxies instead of waiting for your children or your heirs to do it. So that was the why. And I hope with that brief overview of a few statistics, it shows you how important voting your proxy really is. It's a way to influence corporate behavior. And I know you're starting to think, oh, but it's so complicated. So we're going to try to take you through some steps to show you ways that you can do it to make it easy for yourself. First of all, you have to decide what is important to you. And what might you want to avoid? You know, there are many religious groups who for years talked about the, quote, sin stocks, alcohol, tobacco, and gambling. And they would not invest in those things. So this tradition of using your values in terms of what you invest in is a long tradition. It's got a lot of history. Other people have avoided nuclear weapons. Our community took that stance back in the 1980s. We divested from the top 100 defense contractors because we had made a statement that we would be against nuclear war. And some people think about things like factory farms. There are a lot of issues, and we're going to go into more issues later. But my point here is that it's up to you to decide what is important to you, what do you want to avoid, and what do you want to support. There are many people now who are looking at renewable energy as a field to support and put their investments in to help that field grow. Lots of people want to do technology because technology has a lot of future potential. So those are three important questions that I cannot answer for you. You have to answer them for yourselves, but they're the three key questions to this whole movement. What do you want to avoid? What do you want to support? Now, my next slide is going to show you examples of issues that have been considered important by other investors. And you will often see this ESG. ESG is an abbreviation. It's shorthand for environmental, social, and governance characteristics. So when you see ESG, you know that these are three areas that shareholders are often most interested in: environmental, social, and governance. One of the groups that we belong to as Adrian Dominicans and actually helped us learn how to do this kind of activity is the Interfaith Center for Corporate Responsibility. I have lots of websites on the rest of this webinar that will show you the websites to go to, etc. But for this point, I want to show you that ICCR has every religious denomination involved, as well as some associate members who are really investment managers, who are trying very hard to use the power of the proxy and the power of shareholder resolutions to influence corporate behavior. ICCR every 5 years creates priority issues. And I wanted to give you a sampling of the areas that some of those issues are in. So, for one example, corporate governance. They look at things like board independence, diversity, executive compensation, lobbying, and political spending. We're going to look into a couple of those issues in depth a little bit more later. On the domestic health arena, we look at healthcare legislation, pharmaceuticals, medical devices, insurance. In the area of the environment, there's a lot of issues around global warming, about environmental justice, and many variations on that theme. In financial services, there's been a lot of work done on responsible lending. What is responsible lending? What does it look like? In terms of food, there's been a lot of activity in many areas. Our own congregation got very involved in terms of GMOs, genetically modified food, and actually worked with Dow Chemical and were successful in getting Dow Chemical to look at and create a report every year that talks about the environmental effects of its weed control products and its GMO seeds. And then there's global health. And again, our congregation was very involved in access to medicines for HIV and AIDS in order to have that medicine accessible to people of low income, accessible to people in countries where they are considered low income or middle income countries. Human rights. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the issue of trafficking, slavery, the global supply chain. We've been working on using minority suppliers for years with big corporations like Walmart. And then water. A lot of resolutions with Coke and Pepsi on the issue of water and how they're using water in terms of their bottling plants, etc. So this is just to give you an overview of the kind of issues that shareholders have thought about, researched, and worked with corporations. I'm in a congregation. Corporations, to try to get them to use their power to deal with these issues in a more environmentally friendly, more just way for their workers, for their consumers, and for the environment. Again, another example, in 2016, you can see that shareholders proposed resolutions on the environment, political activity, human labor, rights, diversity, sustainability, and others. These are the kind of things that are on a proxy. And you could be voting, if some of these issues are your values, you could be voting to support these. And the reality is we need your support if we're going to get corporations to listen and to pay attention. You know, we need, when we vote for some of these issues to become part of the proxy the following year and to give those who filed them the ability to continue to dialogue with the corporation, they need at least 3% of the shareholders to vote in favor. Now, you'd think 3% isn't much of a threshold, but the reality is we don't get 3% because people aren't voting their proxies. That's why we're here today to ask you, please vote your proxies. Help us get to that 3% threshold so that we can keep moving this issue with the corporations. And it is in the dialogues that these shareholders have that real change happens. But it is the proxy voting that is the incentive for the corporations to stay in that dialogue. So it's very important for you to join us. If you're interested in seeing what issues there are, what other issues there might be, I have a list of websites for you to look at. And for those of you in the audience today, we have handouts we can give you that give you these websites. There's the Proxy Preview, which gives you an overview of what issues are going to be in the next year's proxies. There's the Green Money Environmental Journal. And then you can go right on the ICCR website and see what ICCR, that is the faith-based investors, are doing this year in terms of filing resolutions. And if you'd like to, you can go right to our website, theadriandominicans.org, and you can see what we call the Portfolio Advisory Board, what we're actually doing in terms of our current issues, and where we're filing resolutions and where we'll be voting our proxies in support. And the last one that I put in is actually the United Methodist Church. I looked at a lot of websites and I found that theirs was the easiest to navigate in terms of finding what are the issues that they're voting their proxies on. As I said, a lot of religious groups from every denomination, Jewish as well, are involved in ICCR to really try to influence as a coalition, to influence corporate behavior. And we'd really love to have you as an individual shareholder join us in this effort. So what can you do as an individual investor? First of all, think of those questions. What do you want to avoid? What do you want to support? And talk with your investment advisor. Talk with your financial manager. If you're in a mutual fund, you can actually talk to your advisor at the mutual fund. And I'll give you, again, some more resources in terms of looking at mutual funds. Share what you want to avoid. Share what you want to support. See if they can craft a portfolio for you. We're not talking about any loss in return. There have been many studies that have shown even if you craft your portfolio according to your wishes, there are enough companies to put in a portfolio that you will earn the return you need. This is not about sacrificing return. This is about using the power you have as an investor to influence corporate behavior. And then what about asking to vote your own proxies? Or give directions on how you want your proxies voted and then ask for a report on how they were voted. Because here's the key point. If you do not vote, the corporation counts that as a yes for the management proposal. So every time you don't vote, management gains power. Even if you abstain, say you read through the proxy issue and you say, I don't get this, at least abstain, because then it isn't counted in the final total of votes, and they may not have a majority. So your vote is key. Even an abstention is extremely important in terms of influencing corporate behavior. That's why we're pushing this so much. We want you to vote one way or the other, even if it's an abstention. Please don't throw them in the trash can. So what is this proxy that we're talking about? Well, proxy is just another name for a ballot that's containing resolutions that are up for vote. And typically, and we'll be showing you a proxy later so you can see what one looks like. Typically, on a proxy is the election of the board of directors. This is a key piece of the proxy. And important questions to ask are, is there diversity? You know, I found this latest statistic is women only hold 16.6% of board seats in the corporations in America, and some have no women at all. In the year 2016, look at what a small percentage of women are on boards. And you cannot use the excuse anymore, there are not talented women. So there's one vote that is key. Another one that's often on is the approval of the auditor. And again, what we often look at is, are the fees reasonable? Third, management proposals. The key one here is executive compensation, and I'm going to go into that a bit more later. And then the shareholder proposals, what I was giving you examples of before. Separation of chair and CEO, reporting on climate risk, reporting on environmental impacts, disclosure of lobbying expenses, reports on rights of workers, reports on use of minority vendors. All of those and all those other issues that I showed you are what are called shareholder proposals in the proxy. So that's what a proxy is. It's a ballot. It contains these kinds of issues. Now, to go back to this issue of executive compensation, these are some recent, in my own local paper, the Oakland Tribune, which I forgot changed its name to the East Bay Times. But this was quoted just recently. The average CEO compensation among S&P 500 companies was more than 275 times that of the average worker in 2015. 275 times. You never have to wonder where the money is going again. 275 times. And another quote, according to a recent study of 429 large American companies by the investment research firm MSCI, companies that are awarded their chief executive officers higher pay incentive levels have below median returns. Now, I didn't put the quote in here, but in the article in the paper, it actually showed that as a shareholder, if the CEOs had not given that high incentive pay, you would have made more on your stock. It's that simple a correlation. And the CEOs get lavish pay packages without performing well. It's been shown that the CEO who takes over a company and merges it with another and then it closes down gets more pay than one that tries to run a profitable company. So if nothing else, if all you did on your proxies was vote against these compensation practices, you would be doing incredible good for the just rights of workers, of you as a shareholder, of everybody. Now, for most of you, you're saying, but I don't manage my own stocks. I'm in a mutual fund. You still have the right. The SEC passed a ruling, and you have a right to ask how they're voting your proxies. And you can do this. One of the groups that I'm suggesting here is called greenamerica.org, and they have a chart of every mutual fund in this country, and you can see how they vote. And if you don't like how that mutual fund votes, change mutual funds. There's also one called socialfunds.com, which is a free guide to socially responsible mutual funds. There are many of them out there now that have crafted portfolios that, again, you are not sacrificing return, but you could have a portfolio that more reflects your values than possibly the one you're in now. So please, even if you're in a mutual fund, you still can have the power of the proxy. Now, if you're in a 401k, 401b, etc., you can still exercise your power as a shareholder. But if you're in a 401k, it will take a little more effort. First of all, you want to find out what's in your portfolio, and I found this new site called fossilfreefunds.org that offers an analysis of 3,000 mutual funds that are held in 401k plans. And Morningstar is another website you could use. Again, just to find out what is your money in? Who are you supporting? And then if you're in a 401k, you need to talk with the plan administrator and choose a plan that reflects your values. Now, I'm going to share with you a resource. Before I go here, I want to share with you this resource. And again, I have it listed in this PowerPoint. This is called the Shareholder Action Guide, and it just came out this year. It talks about what I've been talking about in this presentation, and it also gives you steps to do if you're in a 401k, because it means talking to your plan administrator. And this would help you think through the questions to ask and the types of actions to take. So it's available on Amazon.com. I'm sure you can also get it from your independent bookseller. So I heartily suggest that you buy this book. It's an easy read, and it will give you further steps than I can give you in this presentation. But what I'd like to do now is move to inviting our three sisters who are currently voting our proxies to come up and share their experience of what this takes, why they do it, and how it's done. So I'd like to invite up Sister Fran Lambert, Sister Trace Haggerty, and Sister Joan Marconi.
Good afternoon.
This is Fran Lambert who's speaking first.
One of the challenges I have with voting proxies is just the size and the contents of the proxy material. So oftentimes it comes in this blue folder, but sometimes it comes just in the white. Usually there are 3 pieces within that proxy. And we have the annual report, we have the proxy statement, and then we also have the ballot. And that's what we focus on, is the ballot, where we're going to vote. Oftentimes there's another piece that's called the 10K, which is a mammoth report on finances. So the proxy ballot has 2 sections to it, and we would get together sometimes on a Monday afternoon to vote proxies, and we just represent a part of the group that got together to vote proxies on Mondays. And it was helpful because if we had questions about executive pay or the diversity on the board, we could check with each other. And so it became a social event as well. And we had lots of fun, lots of laughter. And after a while, it became easier. The first ballot is always hard. But after that, it got easier and easier, and we knew which things to look for and which things to just pass over. I mean, some booklets are very, very thick. Now, we used to have a season. You know, May and April were the big times for proxy voting, but now it seems to extend through the year. And so it's something that we pay attention to all year long. Now, I usually vote online. And what I look for on the is I just go to Proxy Voting, proxyvote.com, and on each ballot there is a number. And I enter the number, and that particular ballot comes up. And I can vote, and then if I change my mind, I can go back and vote it again, as long as it's before the annual meeting. And so this is a very easy way. Otherwise, they enclose, if you do it on the paper, they enclose an envelope, postage free, that you just put in the mail.
The first thing on the ballot is the board of directors. We as proxy voters are very careful about looking for people who are diverse, either racially or sexually. We want people who are non-white to be on the ballot, and we look for at least 25% of the people that are listed there to either be non-white or women. We're very careful about that, and so that's how we usually vote. The CEO and the chair should not be the same person, because one of the functions of the board is to evaluate the CEO position. We expect the majority of the board members to be independent, and that is that they would not be people who are members of that company. They're not employees. And we also check the auditor's fees. They should not be exorbitant. And we have found on occasion that they have been, this has been very problematic. And so we usually vote against it.
I'm Therese Haggerty. That was Joan Marconi. We do proxy voting because we want to support the choices that the congregation makes through the PAB, our Portfolio Advisory Board. And these choices are in line with our vision statements. Many shareholder proposals echo the values for sustainability, the rights of people, gender equality, which the company usually tells us, don't vote for that one. We are definitely against the large amount of compensation that board members receive in addition to their regular salaries or other committees that they may be on. The average amount of money that the average amount of money that the choices of the executives receive are out of proportion to the salaries of the regular employees. So that is really something to think about. And now I give you back to Corinne Florek.
Thank you so much, Trez, Joan, and Fran. These are women who've been voting proxies for years. And I asked them to share their experience with you to show you that it is possible to do. And there's so many ways that they make it easy for you. It's online. They give you a pre-addressed, pre-stamped envelope. So please take the few minutes and support the issues, as these sisters were saying, that are important to us and we hope are important to you as well. So thank you very much for your work for us. You do a great service for the Adrian Dominican Sisters, and I hope in this presentation you'll be encouraging many senior citizens and others to vote with us. So thank you so much. So, what is the result of your actively voting your proxies? Let me give a minute so the sisters can sit back in their chairs. So what is the result? Well, number one, you're actually exercising your rights as an owner. Oh, and I don't need this mic, do I? Nothing like 3 mics. You're exercising your right as an owner. Number two, you're impacting corporations so that the economy reflects your values and does not adversely affect the environment or low-income communities. Another thing to think about, one of our sisters was saying that her mother knew she was involved in this, and so every time she went home, her mother had a stack of proxies for her to vote from her retirement fund. So even if you're not a shareholder, but your parents are, vote their proxies, please. And this is the guide that I was telling you about before. The Shareholder Action Guide by Andrew Behar, who is the CEO of As You Sow, which is a company that is very involved in filing shareholder resolutions, works with ICCR, faith-based investors, and has a lot of good tips to help you as a shareholder. Now, I'd like to end this presentation on a little bit of a high note, which is that not only voting your proxies is important, but also diversifying your portfolio. And there's an important asset class that you should think about when you're diversifying your portfolio, and that is what is now being called high-impact investing. The Adrian Dominicans have been doing this kind of investing for over 40 years. And what I sometimes say to people is, how much more of a track record do you need before you get invested? This is not venture capital. This is not high-risk investing. This is investing for high impact, which means that it's in low wealth, low income, low asset communities to help them, to empower them to have security, to have livelihoods, to have jobs, to have housing, to have access to credit. And I managed a portfolio once that was part of a bigger investment portfolio. I was part of their diversification strategy. And you all know when 2008 hit, there was stocks were down, bonds were down. Guess which portfolio was the only one that had a positive return? You guessed it, mine, in high impact investing. For a couple of years there, I was the only one making a positive return. So I say to you, this is an important part of your diversification strategy. The kind of projects that we invest in are affordable housing, small business development, daycare centers, health clinics, charter schools. And you don't have to know each of these to do it. There's a vehicle called Community Development Financial Institutions that actually are certified by the U.S. Department of Community Development Financial Institutions. So you can trust that they are worthwhile organizations to invest in. Another thing that you can invest in that is extremely helpful are credit unions. And I want to encourage you to think about taking your money out of the banks and putting them in credit unions. Now, there are some services that credit unions cannot provide because they're really based on consumers. So you have to look at it carefully. But you could at least put your CDs in credit unions, because this example, Self-Help Federal Credit Union, serves groups in California, Chicago, and Florida. And if I have time, I'll tell you a great story about Chicago and Florida. But you can see that they offer many services for their clients. You know, credit unions are really owned by the members. So nobody's making a profit off of these financial institutions. All the savings go back into making loans to the members. There's nobody making money off of them except the members when they get their returns on their savings accounts or the CDs. They do wonderful things to fight off predatory lending, and they work very hard to make sure people become more literate in finances. They do a lot of budgeting consulting, a lot of credit consulting. One of the ways you can invest, you can have your savings there, your money market accounts, you can do a CD. They actually have CDs that will target specific populations. For example, we used to invest in one that was targeted toward women and children. You could put your IRAs in here, and they're insured. It's an insured investment. Now, granted, you're not getting the market returns of stocks and bonds. That's why I'm saying it's part of a diversification strategy. But I want to really encourage you to think about them. And you might say, well, where are they? I'll show you in a minute. You could also be a little bit more risky and perhaps put in some loan money or some equity investments. There's things like new market tax credits, energy tax credits. All of those could be put into the credit union. And this is what you'd be helping. Look at this credit union. Low-income borrowers, 86%. People of color, 51%. Women, 42%. Distressed areas, as defined by the U.S. government, 59%. Rural areas, 21%. The big banks are not here. As a matter of fact, the big banks don't make money banking. I walked into a local bank the other day. I had to walk through 6 investment offices before I could find the teller. I'm just saying. So this young man, James Soria of San Francisco, he saw his father wrestle with debt. And when he found himself struggling too, he went to self-help. They helped him build a credit history and got him back on a healthy financial future. That's what credit unions do. So yes, this is a commercial for credit unions and for CDFIs. So if you want to know where to find one in your area, you can go to these websites, ofn.org. You can go to cdcu.coop for the credit unions. And if you're interested in international finance, Calvert Foundation for $20, just like Kiva, for $20, you as an individual investor can go and help someone in, name a country. Any country you want, you can find someone to help invest in. And then there are organizations that do bigger investments like Global Partnerships and WCCN. So there are many opportunities out there. All you need is a computer. You can find them. And it's a wonderful way to diversify your portfolio and really be making incredible impact in these communities. As I said, we as the Adrians have been doing this for 40 years. We've invested in so many, I can't even give you the statistics. But you say, well, you've probably lost a lot of money. Very little, less than 1% over all those years. Tell me how much you lost in 2008. So, to summarize, there are 4 actions to take as a socially responsible investor. Talk with your investment advisor or plan manager about what you want to support and what you want to avoid or screen out. Vote your proxies. File a resolution on an issue you're concerned about. And I'd suggest you go to ICCR to find out how to do that as an individual, or join with the faith-based investors on their shareholder resolutions. And finally, diversify your portfolio and invest in some high-impact community development organizations. Please join us in this effort to create more justice in our economy. And finally, this is the Adrian Dominican website where you can read up on what we've done over these years, what resources we've used, etc. And we have a few minutes left, so if you are listening to us on live stream and you would like to ask a question, on the website you see at the top right of the screen there's a red box. You can click that and email your question to us, or you can call us directly at 517-266-3493. So we'll keep the lines open for a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions coming in. And, yeah, that is my last slide. Okay. And I'll leave this slide up just to show you that these are, as we said, we have a portfolio advisory board. And these are pictures from some of the groups that we've invested in directly. We do corporate responsibility, community investing, and we vote our proxies. So let me just see. It looks like we have a question.
We have a question from California, San Francisco. Someone who wants to know, are we able to invest in Kiva if we are tax exempt?
I think you are, because Kiva can take individuals, which means they do not need to have an accredited investor. Some of the bigger funds, by accredited investor, it means that you have to have a certain level of savings. And it's prohibitive for most people. But for Kiva, you don't. Anybody can invest. I've had college students tell me that they've invested. So I don't know that there's any prohibition against nonprofits doing it. I would say give it a try. They'll let you know. And if they won't let you, then I would say go to Calvert Foundation, because Calvert has not only platforms for individuals, but they have platforms for many types of investors.
We have another a comment and a question, this one coming from Denver, Colorado. Excellent presentation. Will you offer this webinar as a replay, as I would like to recommend it to people to see?
As a matter of fact, we are going to be posting it on YouTube and on the Adrian Facebook page and on the Adrian website. We want this to go viral. So we're delighted to know that people are listening to us live on the live stream, but we are archiving it and we are going to be posting it, because please send it to as many people as possible. I think that's it. So with that, we will close with saying thank you so much for listening and participating, and please vote your proxies. Thank you.